How are you?
I'm fantastic. Thank you for asking. How's your Sunday?
My Sunday is going well. Welcome to the Journey to DevelopHer Podcast.
Thank you.
Today we have Taneisha Edwards from Jamaica.
Woo! Any Jamaicans in the house?
I hope so. And many may not know that I'm half-breed Jamaican. Jamaican, as I like to say, because I always loved the culture, embodied the culture. Just didn't go there until I was about 28 years old, unfortunately. I grew up in Brooklyn, Flatbush, and that's like the West Indies. Very cultural. So my mother, she cooks the food. She taught me the dances. She's, done everything to keep me connected, and so has my father in many ways. So Taneisha, how has COVID-19 affected the island of Jamaica?
Okay, so I would say that it was scary in the beginning. I mean, we had one case and then the country was shut down. Schools were out. We had stay-at-home orders, most like everywhere else, and it was quite nerve-wracking, right, to say the least. And where I actually live, they had the shutdowns because we had a rapid spread in that area. And when I say rapid spread, I don't mean a lot. It's just that we had 5 and then we had 10 and then we had 70.
Right. Oh, wow.
So it was crazy. And then it was just going from 70 to, we got to around 400 really quickly. And so we had lockdown curfews for the parish that was happening. And so that was a little bit, like a frenzy, but some of us who had to get out still got out and did what we had to do, because I was working on construction. Still, I'm working on that construction. So I was able to do that. But the island of Jamaica, the government of Jamaica, I think they did a really good job. They were on top of the COVID-19. We had a really slow peak. Right. And even now they have reopened the borders, and they've been very strategic in how they let people in. They've been very strategic in how they manage the situation. And I think it's because of that we didn't have this sort of incidents that we've seen elsewhere.
Are you saying that there are Latin Americans back in Jamaica? And
they are Latin Americans in Jamaica.
I didn't know that. Okay.
But you have to apply. So there's a little, I can send it to you. So visit Jamaicans who are coming home, they have to apply and they'll get a response like within 24 hours. And the visitors, they'll just apply and say, hey, I'm coming to do this or whatever it is. I'm coming on that day, and they'll give you a response.
Okay.
As well. It's really quick as well, but you can't come through on the flight without that permit.
Okay. Well, that's good to know.
So you can come. You can come if you want to.
Awesome. So that's good to hear. So, Taneisha, tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do for a living, I guess? Like, what's your occupation? Are you a real estate investor, developer currently? Just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so I'm a college professor. I lecture geology at the top university in the Caribbean. I don't think I would get away with not saying that because it's a recent...
Wait, I'm sorry. You're a doctor, correct?
Yes, I have a PhD in geology. So it's a research PhD. I've not learned any medicine at all. So I wouldn't be able to help with a heart attack or anything like that. But I'm at the top level with that terminal degree in my field, in the area that I study. And so, as I was saying before, I'm a college professor at this top university in the Caribbean, ranked among the best in the world. And in addition to that, I'm a serial entrepreneur, and I'm just jumping into real estate investing and property management and development. So I'm a newbie, but I'm learning a lot, and I'm learning real quickly.
That's amazing. So far, you've been, I guess, the bulk of what you're doing has been project management, or have you invested some of your own money and rehabbed some of your own projects?
Okay, so I have invested my own money.
Nice. Awesome. So tell us about one of your first projects.
Okay, so I'm still on my first
That's
project that is
beautiful. That's awesome.
that's an investment and not where I actually live. It's a 4 unit property or building,
Okay.
and that's what I'm working on. What should I tell you?
So tell me, like, what, let's talk about how you came across finding the property, how much you paid for it, how much money is required to rehab it, if you don't
I'm,
mind sharing.
I'm
And,
looking like I don't want to tell you all that business on
no,
here, but
okay. All right,
but
We're
all
good.
right, all right. Let me see how I can phrase it, because then I also have to work out the currency, and I actually didn't think about that before coming
So,
on here.
oh,
So
okay. So, you know what, we could take a, let's pause. So what I was going to say is I forgot that the currency is different. So what you could say is, because your currency is totally different. So what would be $30,000 American and Jamaican money?
I'm gonna tell you shortly. Technically 4.2. 4.2 million.
Ooh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. So the money is a little bit different.
Okay.
So I paid 17, the sale price for the property was like 17 million. So let me divide that by 140. So that would be around 121,000.
Okay, so 120K approximately.
But the property was in a state,
Okay.
like it needed repairs, so I had to borrow some more money. So like
Right.
another 30,000 on top of that. So then we'd say the total would be like 150. But then I had to find money from my pocket, because what they
Yeah.
allowed me to do and what I wanted to do was completely different.
Right.
So I had to dig up a whole bunch of money, my partner and I, to
Right.
actually expand this property to make it really valuable and for it to make sense for us, because I knew that I wanted a property to develop and something that would bring me income, so that it would be an investment and an asset rather than a liability. But I didn't really understand the numbers, and then also, so I went and I got material to really help me to understand the numbers. So after I got the property, then I was able to really figure out and crunch numbers to make it work for me. So, I mean, while I say that, I guess I can jump back and say finding where I have a property,
Okay.
it's the kind of place that it's difficult to find properties because the demand is so high,
Good.
and so the prices are expensive for new developments. And most of the time, you're getting these 2 bedroom apartments, and these would go for something like, I don't know. Okay, so mine is gonna be like based on what's on the mark. Okay, in Jamaica we have segments, right? The suburban area has a completely different value than the city, which is Kingston and Montego Bay to some, and all the tourist areas as well have high inflated prices because the demand is so high.
Right.
And then also the city itself, which is Kingston, so the demand is pretty high in the best areas. And so the value for the property that I'm gonna have is gonna be tremendous, but it's not, to me, it's not the real value. It's gonna be like probably triple or quadruple what I've invested.
That's amazing. So that means you're going to have a great return on your investment. And are you going to have that property as a buy and hold or Airbnb, or are you going to resell it to another buyer?
I'm definitely not into reselling right now. This is my first baby property for as an asset and not a liability, and so I am not keen on letting it go. I just want to make sure that I get, because the rent prices are also very high and good in these areas. So I definitely want to hold that one. I might consider flipping things, but it will be like in the suburbs where the prices are lower, so I can, flip and get out. But
Right.
as for things that I'm trying to get in Kingston, those things I think I want to buy and hold. Unless I need the money for something, but otherwise it's
Right.
just buying and holding.
So how far is the suburbs from Ocho Rios area or Montego Bay area or Negril, whatever tourist attractions you have?
Well, if you think about Jamaica, it's pretty small and easy to get around, especially now with all the new highways.
Right.
And so the suburbs that are around Kingston, you can technically get to Ocho Rios in 45 minutes to an hour. So it's really easy, really convenient. Many people do it on a daily basis. Before they had this new highway, it used to be like 3 hours or so. So
Okay.
it's really neat now, how they've done it. And that's the other thing, because of all these new infrastructure, I mean, bridges, road bridges, and these new highways,
Hmm.
the demand for real estate in Jamaica is just really booming right now. And the developers are having a fantastic time. And a lot of them are international as well.
Wow. So, I mean, I already knew as soon as I got to Jamaica, I was like, this is where I'm probably going to retire. I would love to buy land, have a farm, all that amazing stuff. And then when I feel like it, drive out to the beach and relax.
It's going to be easy.
Yeah. So I think that's still on my to-do list in the next 2 to 3 years.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Look behind. I'm coming right behind you, girl.
Yeah.
I mean, well, actually, for me, I'm pretty close to the beach, but
Right.
it's really closer to Kingston than the. It's a quaint little seaside town that I live right now, and local tourists come here a lot. Um, People who are Jamaican who come visit home tend to come here a lot just because it's convenient and they don't have to go all the way to Ocho Rios. Plus, there it has its own culture. So where I'm at, it's Hellshire, and they have the most amazing rest. What do you call that now? Some cultural
Restaurant?
restaurants. Yes. So
Okay.
there's every kind of seafood and fish, and it's just done a particular way that they can't get it anywhere else. And so that's one of the attractions. The place is always jam packed with high end cars, and you would think, what's the attraction? But that's it, the food and the fanfare.
What I will say about Jamaica is that they have their Jamaicans in the country, the island of Jamaica. You guys have your own identity. So before I ever came to Jamaica, I've been to Aruba, I went to Bermuda, you know, I think I went to one other place. But when I tell you, they don't have their own identity. Yeah,
Flair.
they don't have like their own music. Well, they probably do. Let me take that back. I don't know about Aruba. No, I think Aruba is like a melting pot of different islands. You have Dutch, you have different things going on there. Bermuda definitely wasn't really
Yeah, because that's still a British colony or something.
right, right,
They identify pretty much as British.
right. And then the food, I was like, what are Jamaican restaurants? So they had, a Jamaican section of each of those islands. Yeah, so, you know, I'm like, yeah, where's the Jamaican restaurants? Where's the Jamaican parties? Like it was interesting that you just Jamaicans have their own identity everywhere, even in London. Like, they have their own quarters and they're doing what they do, and I just love it. And it's so funny that I'm on someone else's island looking for Jamaicans, right?
It's odd. I mean, I went to Ghana
Mhm.
and I saw a flag or something on somebody's car, and I couldn't contain myself. I was like, I was the only Jamaican in the group, and I was just like frantic. I'm like, oh my God. And they said, oh yeah, some Jamaicans are here.
That's
But
beautiful.
wherever they are, they just tend to put up their flag, just
Mhm.
behave a certain way, talk a certain way, just show out everywhere. And it's just, it's something that we're proud of, and it's just a way how we behave. And it's kind of ingrained in us from we were young.
Yeah, I'll tell you this. Like, I've been rocking the Jamaican flag for years. I never stepped foot on soil, but I was rocking the flag, okay?
Just because your parents are making sure you know.
Exactly. Like, my dad, he didn't really raise me, but when he was around, yes, food, culture, embedded all the time. My mom, she's American, but she knows how to cook all of the food. She was in all the Jamaican clubs in Brooklyn. Like, so, again, like I said earlier,
It's
I
easy.
grew up
It's
in the
easy to
culture.
rub off. It's easy to rub off. I mean,
Hmm.
we get a lot of I don't want to say fans, but people who say, "Oh, this is nice. Okay, these people are it." Um, and it's part of it is because we're friendly and we're very sharing and caring.
I
And
agree.
and I think that's why our tourism product does so well because we share so much.
Hmm. So let's talk about more real estate. So I know recently we had a conversation about the banking and foreclosure process in Jamaica. I shared with you how in the U.S., typically when someone has a home that they're defaulting on, so they've missed numerous amount of payments, typically that will result for foreclosure, and then the bank typically lose they would lose money on that property. So let's say if they had that individual owed $500,000 on their home, the bank would probably turn around and sell it for 300,000, and then there's still about typically $200,000 of equity in the house floating around. And I think you told me that in Jamaica the banks do something opposite, right?
Yeah, I mean, you had mentioned the term short sales
Right.
to me, and I was like, what? I don't know about that. And I actually kind of tried to look it up, and I didn't see anything in Jamaica that points to that. So, of course, I'm not a real estate professional or a realtor or anything. So, but I don't know about that at all for Jamaica. And what I do know is that if you mess up on your mortgage in Jamaica, um, very easily the bank can put up your property. The bank or the mortgage holder can put up your property for sale, and it's gonna be auction style. And
Right.
because the demand is so high, they're gonna take um, they'll get good offers, and they can even make a profit. Um, they are also not obligated to take the best offer, and so it's really who they want to win, in my opinion.
Right. That
So,
makes sense.
and this is something or a disclosure that you see on all these different websites. But these websites with these foreclosures are defaulted mortgages. They
Mhm.
tend to be managed. These websites tend to be managed by the lending agency, the mortgage holder, or the bank itself.
Right. And then what I will tell you about our market is that you have an opportunity to do a short sale while you're in the process of a foreclosure here. Our properties do also go to the auctions. So you have the right to do it as a short sale. And typically you would have to show the bank, like, listen, I'm about to file for bankruptcy. And that's what the banks don't want you to do. Because if you file for bankruptcy, the house will get caught or literally attached to a file in the bankruptcy court, and then nobody can do anything. It like freezes everything for about a year or two. So typically when you threaten the bank, so let's say you're about to go through, you're like 3 months behind, a year behind on your mortgage, whatever. That's how long you get in some of the states in the United States. So New Jersey is one of them. I know somebody right now, they've been in foreclosure for 11 years.
Say what?
Exactly. I'm like, 11 years? How did you get around that? But yeah, they've been in foreclosure for 11 years. Craziness. I've seen 7 years. I've seen different amounts of years. And that's in New Jersey. Now,
Wow.
where I also invest in Missouri, it's like a year you're out of there. Maybe even 6 months you're out of there. So that's probably more similar to Jamaica. But in certain states, you have a longer amount of time in your house, and you could actually fight for your house. So one of the ways to stop the foreclosure is to do a bankruptcy. And they also have what they call is loss mitigation, which is also doing a modification of your loan. So that means they'll recalculate the payments for you and then restructure everything so you can get a lower payment. And sometimes it could even be a higher payment, but most of the time it will be a lower payment. So they do have like a lot of laws and clauses that allows you to restructure your loan.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes the banks say, no, we don't want to do that either. So then you threaten them with, I'll file for bankruptcy. And then they're like, oh, okay, let me do what they asked me to do. And then typically What you could do is a short sale to prevent the house going to auction.
Okay.
If it does go to auction, you will be kicked out, of course. Your house will sell for more at the auction. So, it depends on how much you owe on the house, really. Because if it's a house that's $500,000, nobody's going to overbid $500,000 if the house is not worth that, So it depends. So we do have similar practices, but there's ways to go around it. And as an investor, I've been looking into other methods, and I'm not going to really talk about it too much on this particular episode because that's like a whole lesson. But there's ways you can take over someone's mortgage payments, have them deed over the house to you. You take over their mortgage payments. They won't have any foreclosure or any short sale. So it's actually going to help them from ruining their credit and financial history. So you just take over their payments. You go ahead and take over the house. They'll deed the house over to you, and then you'll be responsible of paying the house off in X amount of time and or reselling it in X amount of time.
Okay.
So those are options too. Those are creative financing options in the U.S. It's called Subject to. And I'll probably do a podcast in full detail about that.
Yeah, so I think for us in Jamaica, some of our laws are really different, and also some of the processes in our court system take a long time. So a lot of people have not really explored, some of these other options. In terms of bankruptcy, I don't really know of Jamaicans filing for bankruptcy like that, although I'm almost certain it can be done, but just, it's not as if you're going to get away with anything. Right. They'll probably just sell the debt and come after you some other way. But so because of that, people will tend to try to stay in the house long. So even if somebody purchases it, it's a hard time to get them out because then they have to go to court. And we have some laws that really protect tenants. So you can't just evict them. And also in some areas, the police is not going to easily just go and evict them. They could delay this thing in court for years and years and years.
Right.
But I've heard a situation recently that was in the local news that some lady, she was abroad. She had a small amount of money left on her mortgage. So what she was doing, she was paying in lump sum, going away to work, coming back and paying in lump sum. But apparently she was having some hard time where she was working abroad. And so she wasn't making some of the basic payments. And it was a small amount that she had to pay. And somehow they just took her house and sold it. And she was so livid. She was crying to the news, and everybody saying, oh my God, how can they do this? It's even possible. I've been paying many years for this. So for example, if it was $100,000 for this property in your currency, she probably paid upfront 50% of that. And then she was paying a very small mortgage, but she just wasn't able to pay. And they just took the house from her. So that was quite heart-wrenching to hear. But if people knew that there were ways that they could fight for their house, I think that would be important. And it's something that, local people should really, and everybody everywhere should really understand because, it's an investment and it does affect your future.
Absolutely. I've been working with another local investor on basically trying to figure out a plan to help some of these people at least buy their houses back or another house in the next 3 years after they do face foreclosure. Because at the end of the day, you're facing foreclosure because you couldn't afford your mortgage, right? Or your taxes, because our taxes are very high in the state of New Jersey. So ultimately, if you're living somewhere else, you have to afford rent. So you do have a financial obligation to pay where you live, So I'm not saying this is just a cop-out and, they're not responsible. No, they are financially obligated.
We have to be smart about it. Yes,
right.
I agree with you.
But
so I thought that New Jersey was a cheap tax place, but maybe that was for just the, on commercial goods, like what you purchase at a store. Maybe
that's just the sales tax for consumer goods or clothes or food.
Okay. Because I heard that once and I just was wondering if it's misinformation.
Yeah, it's like in certain parts of New Jersey, it's 3.5% sales tax.
Okay, I heard that.
But
yeah,
the property taxes is one of the highest taxes in the entire United States of America.
So how does that work? You have to pay separately, like just separate installments, or you pay that monthly?
So it depends on who you bank with or who you got your mortgage from. But typically, in a real situation, right, it would be separate. You pay your mortgage separate from your taxes. But if you go through FHA, they bottle it together. So for instance, I'm selling a house that I own right now. The taxes is $10,000 per year.
Wow.
Just the taxes. So it doesn't matter if I pay off the house next year, I'm still going to pay $10,000 a year in taxes just for the house to be in the soil on the street, you know? So that's expensive. Imagine if you become 70 years old, 80 years old, you have to have a budget of $10,000 per year to keep your house. If not, you're going to lose your house.
Wow.
Tax default because the taxes are so high. And then they go up every year.
Wow.
Yeah.
So in Jamaica, the taxes for the property is separate as well. You pay it once per year, but it's low because they don't tax it based on the value of the house that's on the land. It's actually just the value of the land, and the value of the land in Jamaica is pretty cheap. So, I mean, even where I was telling you in Kingston, where the prices are so inflated, the property value and the charge that the government charge you, or the valuation that they assign to it, is it's like less than 10%.
Wow. So they do land assessment here as well. So like the land, I mean, it depends. I don't really have all the details in front of me right now, so I don't want to say the wrong information. But in most cases, when they do the tax assessment, the tax assessment is less than the house. But because our state has a lot of different municipalities, and of course they pay the schools, the courthouses, the fire department, the police department, out of that money, and it's so many different little towns in New Jersey, I think that's one of the reasons why the taxes are high. And if you rehab your house, the taxes go up as well. Yeah.
Okay, so that's something to bear in mind. But also, the income from some of those rehabs are pretty good, right?
Oh, of course. The incomes are great. I mean, once, I sell the house off, I don't have to worry about paying the taxes anymore. I just have to pay then taxes to the federal government on the money I earn from the house. So America's a lot. I'm sure where you are too, there's taxes for everything, but it's probably cheaper.
But in Jamaica, recently they reduced some of the taxes in acquiring houses because they were a burden for locals. I mean, international investors and also expats and, people who they are Jamaican, but they've spent a lot of time abroad. Mm-hmm. For them, it wasn't so burdensome, but for the locals, even high paying professions, they still had a hard time acquiring houses because of these exorbitant taxes. So there's been whopping changes in the tax structure and all the fees associated with acquiring properties in Jamaica now. So that's very good, and that's one of the reasons why we're also seeing this boom in the real estate. Because I mean, even with Corona happening and everything slowing down, mm-hmm. if you go outside or you drive along the street, you see lots and lots of what do you call these multi-story properties going up in Kingston. And actually, in the past, mm-hmm. it was very difficult to erect multi-story buildings in Kingston. So again, that's also a recent change to laws,
right?
That actually allows that. Before, you could only get hotels and a very special permission for anything over 3 floors. But now, it's nice.
It's game on, right? So yes. It's so funny. I was driving through, I'm not sure if it was Kingston or New Kingston, but I was driving around with my sister. She was actually driving. And it was a lot of abandoned buildings downtown. And
okay, so if it's abandoned buildings, you're probably talking about downtown Kingston, and that would probably be the southern part of downtown Kingston. That you have these that look like abandoned buildings in really rustic shape, and it's something that's been on the agenda for a while because they do want to redevelop downtown Kingston, and they talk about it a lot. But there's a lot of heritage there, and I think some of the people cannot agree about what to do. And I think some of the people are hoarding some of these properties as well.
And,
So I
mhm.
don't really know the full story, but I know it's something they wanted to do, and it's improving because they've actually started fixing up some of them. And some of them have vagrants inside of them. Some of them have businesses inside of them, even though they look really dilapidated.
Right.
And it's just a long history of things, and part of it is associated with crime and violence, and I think that has affected some in the attractiveness to investors for a while, just because we have pockets of crime and violence
Hmm.
for a long time. But I mean, I think real estate has managed to survive all of that.
Right. Yeah.
And I think downtown it's been revitalized, but it's not moving fast enough.
Right. And I guess everybody has to think strategically on how to work around the crime and with the government to make sure, I
They're
guess.
not spending money that they're gonna lose. That's a
Exactly.
big thing. Yeah.
So I guess it would be best to just stay by the resorts and,
Oh no, it's not. It's not that bad.
where would you recommend somebody to invest in Jamaica to make a good return?
Well, it depends on their budget and it depends on their goals. So, for example, I mean, Airbnb is a really big market. Short-term rentals is a really big market right now, and I think that's one of the reasons too why the demand is so high, because some of the locals, they can't afford to purchase their own properties in Kingston because the prices are high, but also people who own these properties prefer to rent to short term just because they make such a return.
Right.
And so it really depends on the level of commitment that you want to take. So, for example, if you could invest in Kingston, say a nicely maintained apartment complex with security and all of these things, and you would make an enormous profit. But the problem, not necessarily a problem, you would also have to, be managing or getting people to manage, the cleanup and the maintenance, because it does take detail if you're doing Airbnb or short term rentals, and just that commitment. And the same thing if you were doing it in a resort area, because if you're setting up properties in a resort area, you're either developing for people to purchase and you have some good competition there, or you're also doing the short term because there's a big market for that as well, for weddings and events and all of these
Right.
master classes. So it really just depends on what you want to do and what you can afford, because in Kingston you can get a good deal compared to deals in New York and Newark and Chicago. You can get a good deal in Kingston and
So
in
question.
Jamaica anywhere.
Are you familiar with like what a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom would rent for?
Okay, so we have similar prices to the US. I mean, high-end properties in Kingston can rent for $1,500 US, $2,000 US.
For 1-bedroom?
1 bedroom and 2 bedroom. Yes.
Okay,
So
that's New York.
yes, yes. So that's what I'm talking about when I say overpriced and inflated, right? Because some of the salaries here, local salaries in here, Jamaica cannot actually support that. But we have a lot of expats and a lot of business people who come in, and they're okay. They're fine with that. We have a lot of people who come in on private jets, and there's private jets crisscrossing the island as well. So some of them are okay with that. A lot of imported CEOs for businesses are here as well, and they would live in some of these places. There is significant tier in the rent quality and just the quality of what's inside of these properties. Because when we talk about a 1,500 or 2,000 US 1 bedroom or 2 bedroom, it's a given there's going to be a pool. It's a given that it's going to be security, night and day, and some other, facilities as well.
Right. Awesome. And we spoke briefly about real estate development, what's happening, how, I guess the infrastructure of Jamaica has changed, even just building up multiple stories. What are some of the projects you plan to work on? Like, where do you see yourself in the next year or so in real estate development?
Well, if I get my way, I will probably next year. I hope to be on another property,
Okay.
if I get my way. But the thing is, the market is so odd. Odd might not be the best word, but it is in a sense that people are not really letting go good properties until there's an issue. And so I want to purchase something that I can really make a return on. I don't want to purchase a property that I'm going to pour a ton load of money into and then I'm just paying the mortgage from the rental or anything like that. So
Right.
I really want to make sure that I get a good deal, but I will be looking, and I am now looking at ways to employ different strategies, because in the courses that I took, I learned that I didn't have to purchase, from off the MLS. I didn't have to purchase from what's listed. I could actually seek out other properties before they get priced.
Right.
So
And
probably discounting.
yeah, we spoke about that. So were you able to find out if Jamaica has a database to find these motivated sellers that you need to find to get
I
those deals?
don't think there's a database per se, but before I didn't think there was a way to find maybe folio and volume number and stuff like that, but there's a way to find that. So I'll be probably looking at it from that angle.
Right, definitely. Good. That's good, because I know that would be a challenge for me, because in the US we have a lot of different softwares such as listsource.com. It pretty much tells you, what's going through probate, what land is available in this zip code, what buildings are available, who's behind on their mortgage, et cetera, even fire damage properties. So with that being said, it's just easier for us to find information. And I didn't know how difficult it would be for you to find information in Jamaica, especially, when you and I talked, I said, you know what, I might try to look for something, but I'm like, how would I really find it if there's not really a database and I'm over here? So I think that's awesome. Let's see, what else? We spoke about the construction side of things as well. I told you that I would be duplicating multiple amounts of properties because I was going to do pre-engineered or prefab housing, which is also called modular houses in the US. And then I think you said you guys had a similar setup, or you've seen a particular form of real estate technology.
Oh yeah, oh yes. We in Jamaica we have different real estate technologies, if we're gonna call it that. I think so because of the hazards that Jamaica face, because I guess I have to mention this. So we're in a hurricane belt and we get the hurricanes. So the houses have to be strong. So for a very long, we also get earthquakes too. So the houses shouldn't be too strong.
Right.
But for a very long time, Jamaicans have prided themselves and been very accepting of a particular model of building, which is reinforced concrete reinforced with rebar steels. And so that's been the way that most houses are built in Jamaica. But we also have prefabricated houses from the 1940s, I believe. So certain communities like Harborview, certain communities in Portmore, and I'm sure elsewhere, have had these houses. So they've stand the test of time, and people definitely trust them, because when they go to break them down, they see that they're very
Right.
difficult to break down. And so we have those. So we have factories that that can put them together and have the different pieces. So you can order them and they'll deliver them. And then we also have different kind of um, development technology where they use foam. So it's a sort of so they'll put up a framing and they'll put the rebar or the steel inside of it, and then they'll actually spray on the foam, and then they'll spray a coating of concrete or something, and that too is pretty durable. And so we have multiple different technologies here.
Awesome. That's amazing. One, it's going to be safe. Two, it's speeding up the process of
Oh
building.
yes,
Yep.
really
And
quickly.
I know personally, a lot of those resorts, they're all prefabricated or pre-engineered. I promise you, they are. You just don't realize it because nobody's telling you, and you're not
Oh
probably.
yes, for sure. Some of the bigger developments, even nowadays, they're all prefabricated in some
Yeah,
sort of
because
way.
typically when I'm telling someone, yeah, I'm going to do modular or prefab here, they're like, oh, what are you doing? A trailer park or trailer home? I'm like, no. Like all of the buildings that you see and in majority of your major cities, they're all using prefab, pre-engineering technology to build the houses or buildings. Especially in Brooklyn, like all of those buildings are using, even if it's like a prefab wall, they have the wood already put together as you would frame a bedroom. They have it where the wood is already put together. All you're doing is connecting four divisions in the room,
Mm-hmm.
and you could get a room done in probably in an hour. Something that would take 4 hours or a day could take an hour. So that's also a form of prefab as well.
I'm all for the new technology. As I learn them, I'm looking to implement them. As long as there's no financial barrier, I'm interested because I mean, if we can get houses complete or completely refurbished in 6 months and 3 months as opposed to a year and a half, it makes a big deal. I mean, in the mortgage that you have to pay out, the stuff that you have to pay, and the length of time before you actually start seeing a return or a balancing.
Right. What I also noticed, I want to say I was in like the St. Anne area. Is that near Ocho?
Yes,
Rio?
that's Ocho Rios is in St. Anne, so you got it right.
Okay, good. So I did notice when I was going horseback riding, they had a lot of abandoned development sites. What do you think happens? Do you think the people are running out of money, or the crew was bad? Like, what do you think that the story is behind those situations?
I'm not quite sure I know where exactly you're talking.
I mean, it's at least like 5.
Okay, I'm not 100% sure I know exactly what you're talking about, but it's really typical to just be in Jamaica and see houses that are unfinished, started. Sometimes it's 5 years old, sometimes it's 10 years old, sometimes it's 20 years old, sometimes it's just 1 year old. And these are for varied reasons. So people come and they invest or they purchase the property, and some of these people are, and see, Jamaica has a culture as well of building their own and not really going to the bank. So what they'll do is they purchase this property and they'll start it, and then they run out of money because they underestimated it, and then they'll go save again for 5 years and they come back.
Well, how hard is it to find funding from your banks or private money lenders out there? Is that like an option?
I don't know of private money lenders, but I'm almost certain it's here and it's possible. You just have to be connected or find the people who are interested, because the interest from banks are pretty low. So I'm almost certain you can find private money lenders. I just don't know that they're advertising as that. But getting money from banks for development is pretty easy in Jamaica. I actually looked, and so for your very first property, I'm not 100% sure if this is for foreigners as well.
Yeah, I would be using using my own private funds and or investors' funds from here. But I was just curious, like how easy it is for, let's say I wanted to come over there and help you and some other newer developers. Like how easy or hard would it be for us to get some money from the bank so they could do a project?
It would be pretty easy. I mean, once they evaluate the project and see that it's profitable, they're happy because they're making money. They're happy to and they evaluate you and you can afford it. They're happy to make it happen. The banks generally here are very friendly, and generally the entire government is friendly towards private investors, foreign investors, and also locals. So it's going to be very easy to set up a company, very easy if that's the route that you want to go, and also very easy to get these monies. They'll give you up to 80%, I think, or 70%. For your project. I mean, if the project is, you can also, this is just a bank, and we also have other institutions that will give you money because they want people to create cheap houses. There's an incentive, I believe, for developers to create houses that Jamaicans that are living in Jamaica, working in Jamaica can actually afford. So
Awesome.
so there's a market for that, I think, as well. So let's team up. Let's do something like that, because I think there's a big incentive, and we can talk about that later on.
Absolutely. And that's one of my missions in the US, making sure the people from communities like mine. So I grew up in a very urban setting. I was born in Brooklyn, and the Brooklyn that I grew up in is no longer there. Okay. So no one, I mean, whoever's,
I heard about that. Is
yeah,
it just
whoever's left,
gentrification?
yeah, gentrification, and who's left in my community, they all have subsidized housing. So it goes by their income. They pay a third. I mean, that's great, right? However, if you don't have that, you can't live in that neighborhood. It's just too expensive at this point. And where I grew up after Brooklyn in Newark, New Jersey, it's starting to see that trend. But what I can say about the mayor of Newark, he's making sure he preserves the communities and the culture. He's making sure that most of what I understand, the developers that come in, you have to make sure you're trying your best to keep a portion of it affordable. So at least 25% has to be, if it's an apartment building, it has to be affordable rent for going by somebody's income. I think they have like studios for $700 or one bedrooms for $900, just making it affordable, because now one bedrooms in Newark are about $1,200 to $1,300, which is high compared to a couple years ago. And so he's doing everything in his power. If you want to develop here, you have to make sure we put a cap on the rents, at least for a certain percentage. And even the homes that I plan to build, if you're a resident of Newark, we're going to make sure you're getting the houses at a discounted price. But if you're not from Newark, or if you're from, like, let's say you're coming from New York City, unfortunately, you are going to pay the market rate for the house. But if you're a Newark resident, you'll pay definitely a deeply discounted price for the house. So I think the same should go for Jamaicans, people in Jamaica. You want to make sure you're keeping the homes affordable so the people from the community can actually be able to be vested in their communities.
Yes, I agree 100. I agree 100%. And I think in some situations we've actually lost that ability to preserve that for some people. Some people actually get pushed out because of this. And so I think it's something that's very important.
When they get pushed out in the city, I'm assuming you're talking about like major cities in Jamaica. I'm assuming they just go to the suburbs where it's more affordable.
Oh yeah, that's what a lot of people have to do with theirs. They're wanting to be able to afford it. I mean, I don't think there is a choice really. They've just gone to the suburbs,
right,
and had to commute.
Right. We do know the Jamaica market is hot like fire. I actually started following some of the real estate professionals and investors out there just to see what's happening. There's a lot going on there. So it's definitely a booming market. Taneisha, I know you're going to be great in that market, and
Thank
hopefully
you.
we'll be able to work together,
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
do some projects, even if you're interested in projects in the U.S., because I do know you wanted some in the Midwest, maybe Chicago area.
I was looking at it just because of the information that I got that sounded really feasible. What do you think about Florida though? Because I've seen some properties that look pretty good in Florida. I'm like,
Florida, actually, that's
but
my
I
goal.
wasn't sure.
That's my goal for early next year. They have like this little island. I'm not going to give out all the deets, but literally, it looks like Jamaica in this little section of Florida. And you have a lot of vacation homes that you could buy for under 100,000, and you can rent them out, do Airbnb there or short-term rentals, or I might just live there depending on how I'm feeling at the time.
I know for a lot of people in Northeast, they tend to sell their properties, and I guess it's from those high taxes that you were talking about. They tend to sell their properties later in life when they retire and move down to Florida.
And Florida taxes is kind of high too, but not as bad as New Jersey. Like New Jersey is the worst.
Wow.
Yep. Awesome. This was great. Thanks for coming on the Journey to DevelopHer podcast. You're definitely going to be a great developer in the near future. I mean, you're working on projects now, so You're a developer now. Thanks again. Thank you for coming on.
You're welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
Yep, I had to.
And,
I'm
and thank you for encouraging me.
definitely. Let's definitely stay in contact.
Sure.
God bless you.
Thank you so much.
And have a great day. We'll talk
Thank
soon.
you. Bye.
Bye.